Okay, so you're about to walk into this interview, right?
Hmm.
Your dream job is a cellar operator. We've all been there. It's nerve-wracking. It's exciting. You've got one shot to make a killer impression.
It's true. It's true. But that's where we come in.
Exactly. Consider this your pregame pep talk.
Love it.
We're going to dive deep into the world of craft brewing using these awesome RoleCatcher guides that you shared with us, the career guide and the interview guide. Think of them as your playbook to acing that interview.
And the best part is we're not just going to tell you what to say. We're going to help you understand what those interviewers are really looking for.
Yes, those subtle cues.
The insights.
That can make all the difference. Okay, so before we crack open these interview questions,
Yes,
let's set the stage. What exactly does a cellar operator do? I mean, I know it has something to do with beer, but like, what's a typical day like? What are we talking about here?
So imagine this. The cellar is the heart of the brewery. That's where the magic of fermentation happens. As a cellar operator, you're not just making beer, you're nurturing it. You're monitoring every stage of its development, making sure those flavors are perfectly balanced.
So it's kind of like being a beer babysitter,
Yeah,
but with a lot more science involved.
100%. You're responsible for everything from yeast management and temperature control to filtration and carbonation. You're constantly monitoring gauges, taking readings, making adjustments to ensure that beer is fermenting properly and meeting those strict quality standards.
That sounds like a lot of responsibility.
Mm.
No wonder breweries are so picky about who they hire for this role.
Absolutely.
Speaking of hiring, let's dive into those interview questions.
Let's do it.
I know you've selected some common ones that cellar operator candidates often face.
Yeah.
Lay it on me.
Okay, let's start with one that seems simple but can actually reveal a lot about your passion and knowledge. What inspired you to become a cellar operator?
Okay, so this isn't the time to just say, like, I like beer, right?
You think not, but
I mean, I like beer.
we all like beer. That's why we're here. But interviewers want to see a deeper level of enthusiasm and understanding. Think of it this way. You're at a beer festival. You get to talk to your brewing hero. What would you say? That's the energy you want to bring to this interview.
I love that analogy. So instead of just saying, I like beer, you want to talk about, like, what specifically excites you about the brewing process, right?
Exactly. Maybe you're fascinated by the science of fermentation, the way different yeast strains can create such a wide range of flavors and aromas. Or maybe you're drawn to the meticulous nature of the role. You know that attention to detail required to maintain consistency batch after batch. There's so much to it.
So if I were interviewing for this role, I might say something like, I've always been fascinated by the transformation that happens during fermentation,
Yeah.
how these simple ingredients, water, barley, hops, and yeast, can create such complex and nuanced flavors.
Now you're talking.
Right.
That kind of answer shows that you're not just here for a job.
Yeah.
You're here because you're genuinely passionate about the craft. And that passion is contagious.
It's like the difference between someone who, like, enjoys drinking beer and someone who could talk about beer for hours on end.
Exactly.
Which, let's be honest, we all know those people.
We do. And speaking of talking for hours on end, have you ever used RoleCatcher's AI interview prep tool?
Oh, tell me more.
It's like having a personal interview coach available 24/7. You can practice answering these common questions. The AI will give you feedback on your delivery, your content, even your use of industry-specific keywords. It's incredible.
Whoa, that's amazing. So it's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it, too.
It's everything.
Yeah.
And that's where RoleCatcher can be a game changer. It can help you refine your answers, boost your confidence, and ultimately make a lasting impression on those interviewers.
Okay, that's super helpful. Now, let's move on to another question that often comes up in cellar operator interviews. What experience do you have in wine or beer production?
Okay, so this is where you get to showcase your hands-on experience, even if it's not directly as a cellar operator. Have you volunteered at a local brewery, taken a brewing course, experimented with home brewing in your basement?
So any experience that demonstrates your, like, familiarity with the industry and your eagerness to learn is fair game.
Exactly. And if you're just starting out, don't be afraid to highlight those experiences. The RoleCatcher Career Guide actually emphasizes the importance of gaining hands-on experience, even if it's in an entry-level position like assisting cellar operators or brewing teams.
It's all about getting your foot in the door and soaking up as much knowledge as possible, like a sponge, but for beer.
I like that. I like that a lot. And don't forget to mention any certifications or relevant education you might have, even if it's from a different but related field. It just shows you're serious about your professional development.
Speaking of professional development, let's tackle a more technical question that often pops up in these interviews. How do you ensure quality control in the production process?
Ooh, this is a big one. It's not enough to just say, I follow the brewery's procedures. Interviewers want to see that you understand the WHY behind those procedures, the science behind those perfect pints.
So you'd want to talk about the importance of like monitoring fermentation temperatures, checking pH levels, all those factors that can impact the final product.
Exactly. And this is where specific examples can really make your answer shine. Have you ever used a hydrometer to measure the specific gravity of a beer? Are you familiar with sensory evaluation techniques?
Okay, so instead of just saying I'd monitor the fermentation process, I might say something like I'd regularly check the gravity readings using a hydrometer to track the progress of fermentation and ensure the yeast is attenuating properly.
Now you're speaking our language. Those specific details demonstrate a deeper understanding of the process, and it shows the interviewer that you've got the technical chops for the job.
And speaking of technical chops, I have to ask about RoleCatcher's AI resume builder. I mean, before you even get to the interview.
So important.
Yeah. Your resume needs to make it past those digital gatekeepers.
Oh, absolutely. That's where RoleCatcher can be a lifesaver. Their AI resume builder analyzes the job description you're targeting and suggests relevant keywords and phrases to help you stand out.
Oh, wow. So it's like having an AI assistant who can sift through your experience and highlight those golden nuggets that will make your resume shine.
It's exactly that. And it's not just about keywords, it's about crafting a compelling narrative that showcases your skills and experience in a way that's tailored to the specific brewery and role you're applying for.
So it's like having a personal branding expert who also happens to be a whiz with algorithms.
It's a game changer.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back to those interview questions. Here's one that might seem a bit basic, but it's crucial. How do you maintain a clean and organized cellar?
This one might seem like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised how many people underestimate the importance of sanitation in a brewing environment.
Yeah, it's not just about being tidy, right? It's about preventing contamination and ensuring the integrity of the beer.
100%. We're talking about a sterile environment where even the tiniest speck of dust or bacteria can wreak havoc on a batch of beer.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So this is where you'd really want to emphasize your meticulous attention to detail, your understanding of sanitizing procedures, and your ability to maintain a spotless workspace.
Exactly. You could even mention specific cleaning agents or techniques you're familiar with, like the importance of using a no-rinse sanitizer on surfaces that come into contact with the beer.
Oh, okay. Or how about properly labeling and storing yeast strains? You don't want to accidentally mix those up.
Precisely. Those details show that you understand the critical role hygiene plays in producing high-quality beer.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about problem solving. Here's a question that's sure to come up in some form. How do you troubleshoot issues that arise during the production process?
Yes. The inevitable curveballs that brewing throws our way.
Right. Because, let's face it, brewing is a complex process, and unexpected things happen. A stuck fermentation.
Oh, yeah.
A faulty valve.
Happens all the time.
A rogue hop cone.
You name it.
You name it, right. So when answering this question, it's not enough to just say, I'd call for help, or I'd Google it.
Though I have Googled it many a time.
Right.
But you want to showcase a more proactive and analytical approach.
Give me an example. Let's say you're monitoring the fermentation, and you notice the temperature's dropping too quickly. What's your next move?
So here's where you talk through your thought process, right? You could say something like, first, I'd check the cooling system to make sure it's functioning correctly. Then I'd review the fermentation schedule and recipe to see if there's any deviation from the standard parameters. Depending on the situation, I might increase the temperature set point, insulate the tank, or consult with the brewmaster for guidance.
So it's about demonstrating that you understand the potential causes.
Yes.
That you can follow, like a logical troubleshooting process.
100%.
And that you're not afraid to seek support when needed.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to draw from your past experiences, even if they weren't in a professional brewing setting. Maybe you had a finicky sourdough starter that taught you a thing or two about temperature control.
I love that. Turning those kitchen mishaps into valuable career lessons.
Resourcefulness is key in this role. Now, speaking of resourcefulness, let's talk about safety. It's paramount in a brewing environment, and interviewers will want to know you take it seriously. That brings us to the question. How do you ensure the safety of yourself and others while working in the cellar?
Right. We're talking heavy machinery, potentially hazardous chemicals, a whole lot of moving parts. not a place to be messing around.
Absolutely. When answering this question, you want to emphasize your unwavering commitment to following safety protocols every single time. Think about any experience you have working with personal protective equipment. Gloves, goggles, steel-toe boots, the whole 9 yards.
And what about lockout, tagout procedures? Those are essential for preventing accidents when working with machinery, right?
You're absolutely right. Highlighting your familiarity with those procedures demonstrates a strong safety mindset. And don't forget about general workplace safety awareness. Keeping walkways clear, handling chemicals responsibly, knowing those emergency procedures, these all show you're not just looking out for yourself, but for the entire team.
It's about creating a culture of safety, right? Where
Yeah.
everyone feels responsible for keeping each other out of harm's way.
Exactly. And that's something any responsible brewery will appreciate. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about staying ahead of the curve in this ever-evolving world of craft brewing. A question you might encounter is, how do you stay up to date on industry trends and advancements?
Ah, yes. Because the world of craft beer never stands still, does it? New styles, techniques, equipment are constantly emerging. It's one of the things that makes it so exciting.
Absolutely. And interviewers want to see that you're just as passionate about learning and growing as they are. This is your chance to geek out a little bit about the industry. Do you subscribe to any brewing magazines? Follow industry blogs? Podcasts, maybe?
Oh, and what about attending conferences or trade shows? Those are always buzzing with the latest and greatest in brewing technology and innovation.
Exactly. Those are fantastic ways to network, learn from other brewers, and stay ahead of the game. And here's a pro tip from the RoleCatcher Career Guide. They specifically recommend seeking out continuing education programs or workshops offered by brewing schools or organizations.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
It shows potential employers that you're actively investing in your professional growth and committed to staying at the forefront of the field.
It shows initiative.
Yeah,
It shows you are really in it to win it.
exactly.
Speaking of which, let's dive into a question that gets at the heart of a cellar operator's daily juggling act. How do you manage multiple tasks and prioritize your workload?
Because I imagine it's a lot to keep track of, right? Fermentation schedules, cleaning routines, equipment maintenance, deliveries, not to mention the occasional beer tasting.
You're not wrong. That's why organizational skills are crucial for this role. When answering this question, it's all about demonstrating that you have a system for staying on top of things and managing your time effectively.
So should you mention specific tools or techniques you use, like to-do lists, calendars, maybe even project management apps?
Absolutely. Sharing your organizational strategies, even if they seem simple, shows that you've thought about how to handle a demanding workload. And if you're newer to the field, don't be afraid to acknowledge that you're still developing those time management muscles, but are eager to learn from experienced brewers.
Showing that willingness to learn is always a good thing. Okay, let's move on to a question that's all about keeping those brews flowing smoothly. How do you ensure that all equipment is properly maintained and calibrated?
This goes back to what we talked about earlier, quality control. A well-maintained brew house is a happy brew house. And a happy brew house makes delicious beer. It's a beautiful cycle.
So true. And just like a chef relies on their knives, a cellar operator depends on their equipment to produce top-notch brews.
Precisely. When answering this question, you want to highlight your understanding of preventative maintenance, your ability to troubleshoot equipment issues, and your overall commitment to keeping things in tip-top shape.
So you might mention experience with cleaning tanks, inspecting hoses, calibrating thermometers, those kinds of things.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get a little technical here. Mentioning specific equipment or procedures like a CIP system that's clean in place, by the way, or experience disassembling and sanitizing a racking arm demonstrates a deeper understanding.
It shows you're not afraid to get your hands dirty, or at least safely sanitized.
Great.
Okay, on to the next question, which is all about teamwork. How do you communicate with team members and other departments to ensure smooth production?
Communication. The secret sauce of any well-run brewery. Because brewing isn't a solo act, it's a team effort that requires everyone to be on the same page.
From the brewmaster to the packaging crew, everyone plays a vital role in getting that delicious beer into the hands of thirsty customers.
Absolutely. And the cellar operator is often at the heart of it all, coordinating with multiple departments to keep those brews moving. So when answering this question, highlight your ability to communicate clearly and concisely, whether you're conveying information about fermentation progress, equipment status, or potential hiccups.
And active listening is just as important as clear speaking. right? Like
Mm-hmm.
being able to truly understand and respond to feedback or concerns from other departments.
Absolutely. It's about being approachable, collaborative, and solution-oriented. Instead of just saying, I'm a good communicator, share specific examples. Did you have to explain a complex procedure to a new team member?
Yeah.
Or perhaps you resolved a scheduling conflict with the packaging team. Those real-life stories demonstrate your communication skills in action.
It's all about showing, not just telling. And speaking of showing, I have to give another shout out to RoleCatcher's AI-powered interview practice tool.
Yes.
It's like having a personal coach who can analyze your communication style, identify any areas for improvement, and help you build confidence for that all-important interview.
It's such a valuable resource, especially for a role like this, where clear and effective communication is essential.
Okay, let's dive into a question that can sometimes make or break an interview. Can you describe a time you had to deal with a difficult situation at work?
Now, this is a classic behavioral interview question, and it's designed to assess your problem-solving skills, your ability to stay calm under pressure, and how you handle those inevitable workplace challenges.
And let's be honest, there's no shortage of potential challenges in a brewery, right?
Exactly. But remember, they're not necessarily looking for brewing-specific drama. It could be anything. A disagreement with a coworker, a missed deadline. The key is to choose a situation where you faced a genuine obstacle and had to use your skills and judgment to navigate it successfully.
So how should you structure your answer to this kind of question? Is there a secret formula?
The STAR method is your best friend here. It stands for situation, task, action, result.
Okay.
It helps you craft a clear and concise response by providing a framework for your story.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Walk me through it. Let's say a batch of beer wasn't fermenting properly. How would you use the STAR method to answer this question?
Perfect example. You could say something like this. During my time at previous brewery, I was monitoring a batch of our flagship IPA, and I noticed that the fermentation wasn't progressing as expected. The gravity readings were plateauing too high, and the beer wasn't attenuating properly. My first step was to double-check the fermentation logs and recipe to ensure all parameters had been met. After confirming everything was in order, I suspected there might be an issue with the yeast.
Wow, already I'm seeing how the STAR method helps break down the problem and showcase your thought process.
It's a lifesaver, honestly. Where was I? Yes, you suspected a problem with the yeast.
Exactly. So what did you do?
You continue with something like, I immediately alerted the head brewer, and together we decided to take a sample for microscopic analysis. The analysis revealed that the yeast wasn't as healthy as it should have been, so we pitched a fresh batch of yeast to get the fermentation back on track. We were able to salvage the batch and avoid any significant delays in production.
Wow, that's a great example of turning a potential disaster into a learning experience. You clearly outline the situation, your role in addressing it, the actions you took, and the positive outcome.
Exactly. And by involving the head brewer, you also demonstrated teamwork and a willingness to seek guidance when needed. Now, keep in mind that not every difficult situation has a picture-perfect ending. What if you made a mistake that impacted production?
That's a great point. Because, let's face it, everyone makes mistakes, especially in a fast-paced environment like a brewery.
Absolutely. What matters most is how you handle those mistakes. When answering this question, be honest, own up to your errors, and most importantly, explain what you learned from the experience and how you've grown as a brewer.
So it's all about demonstrating that growth mindset. You're not afraid to make mistakes as long as you can learn and improve from them.
Exactly. It's like that old saying, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. It's that resilience and determination to learn and grow that will impress those interviewers. Now, before we move on to our final question, let's take a moment to talk about something that often trips people up in interviews, those pesky curveball questions that you just don't see coming.
Oh, you mean those questions that are designed to, like, throw you off balance and see how you think on your feet?
Exactly. And while we can't predict every possible curveball question, there are some strategies you can use to handle them like a pro. First and foremost, don't panic. Take a deep breath and remember that it's okay to pause for a moment to gather your thoughts.
That's good advice because I think my instinct would be to start rambling.
I hear you. It's a natural reaction, but try to resist the urge to fill the silence with just anything. It's better to take a moment to compose yourself and formulate a thoughtful response.
So what are some other strategies for handling these curveball questions?
Well, one approach is to try and figure out what the interviewer is really trying to get at. Are they testing your problem-solving skills, your creativity, your ability to think critically under pressure?
So it's like a puzzle. You have to decode the hidden meaning behind the question.
Exactly. And once you have a better understanding of what they're looking for, you can tailor your response accordingly.
That makes so much sense. Now, are there any other tips for handling those unexpected interview moments?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions if you're unsure what the interviewer is asking. It shows that you're engaged and want to understand their perspective. And if you find yourself drawing a blank, don't be afraid to admit that you need a moment to think about it. You could say something like, "That's a great question. Let me ponder that for a moment." It buys you some time to gather your thoughts and formulate a thoughtful response.
Those are all excellent tips. And you know what else can help you prepare for those unexpected interview moments? RoleCatcher's AI interview prep tool.
It's the best.
You can practice answering all sorts of questions, including those curveballs, and get personalized feedback on your responses.
It's like having a secret weapon in your back pocket. And speaking of secret weapons, let's talk about one last question that can really showcase your passion and knowledge. What are your favorite beer styles to brew and why?
Now, this isn't a question you'd necessarily find in every Cellar operator interview, but if it comes up, this is your chance to let your geek flag fly.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to get specific and share what excites you about those particular styles. Maybe you love the challenge of brewing a perfectly balanced IPA with just the right amount of hop bitterness and aroma.
Or perhaps you're drawn to the subtle complexities of a barrel-aged sour beer, where thyme and oak create layers of flavor that evolve on the palate.
And if you're feeling really adventurous, you could even talk about a unique or experimental style that you've been wanting to try. The key here is to demonstrate your passion for the craft and your willingness to push boundaries and experiment.
And who knows, your enthusiasm might just inspire the interviewer to try something new.
It's always fun to share your love of craft beer, especially with fellow enthusiasts.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here today, from the technical aspects of brewing to those all-important soft skills like communication and problem solving. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the importance of career progression and continuous learning. The RoleCatcher Career Guide highlights some exciting specialization options for Cellar operators as they gain experience.
Absolutely. As you hone your skills and develop your brewing intuition, you might find yourself drawn to a particular aspect of the process. It's not just about moving up the ladder. It's about expanding your skill set horizontally and becoming a true expert in your chosen niche.
So it's like choosing your own brewing adventure. What are some of the paths that Cellar operators might consider as they gain experience?
One common path is to become a head brewer, where you oversee the entire brewing process and manage a team of brewers.
That's a pretty sweet gig. Going from overseeing fermentation to leading the entire brewing operation.
Absolutely. It's a challenging but incredibly rewarding role for those who are passionate about the craft and have a knack for leadership.
And for those who have, like, entrepreneurial spirits, the guide also mentions the possibility of starting your own brewery.
Now, that's a whole other level of dedication. But it's also incredibly inspiring to see so many craft breweries popping up, each with their unique story and brewing philosophy.
And who knows? Maybe one day we'll be interviewing you for a head brewer position at your very own brewery.
I would love that.
But in all seriousness, regardless of which path you choose, remember that continuous learning is essential for staying ahead in this ever-evolving industry.
Absolutely. Whether you're pursuing certifications, attending workshops, or simply reading industry publications, make it a habit to never stop learning and growing as a brewer.
And don't forget about those invaluable networking opportunities. Building relationships with other brewers can open doors to new knowledge, collaborations, even job opportunities down the line.
It's all about being part of the craft beer community and supporting each other's passion for great beer.
Beautifully said. So there you have it, folks. We've covered the ins and outs of the cellar operator role, from the technical aspects of brewing to those all-important soft skills. We even explored some potential career paths. We dissected those common interview questions, those curveballs designed to keep you on your toes, and even sprinkled in some wisdom from those fantastic RoleCatcher guides that you shared.
Remember, preparation is key to acing that interview. Showcase your passion, your knowledge, and that meticulous attention to detail that makes a great cellar operator.
And don't forget about the incredible resources that RoleCatcher provides. Their AI-powered tools can be your secret weapon in crafting a standout resume, practicing your interview skills, and ultimately landing that dream job.
So go out there, brew up some magic, and let's raise a glass to your future success.
Cheers to that. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
It's true. It's almost like those curveball questions are like those personality tests, you know?
Yeah.
They don't really care what the answer is as long as you don't say, like, kill all the squirrels or something, you
No,
know?
as long as you can hold a conversation and, like show that you're like you can think under pressure.
Exactly. And speaking of things that are, like moving along smoothly, let's transition into this idea of career progression. Because I think that that's something that, like, even though it's not directly related to an interview question, showing that you've thought about your future in the field, that you're in it to win it, it really does demonstrate your commitment, and your vision for yourself, too, which I think is really valuable for an employer to see.
And it shows that you have ambition, right?
Yeah. Like you're not just coming in as a cellar operator thinking, this is it, this is all I'm going to be. Maybe you are, but like, having that kind of vision of like, oh, where could this take me? Where could I go from here? I think that's exciting
Exactly.
and something that they really look for.
And the RoleCatcher Career Guide, as you know, dives into this beautifully. It talks about like, shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. But in this case, you might land the head brewer position.
That's right. And it's not always, just moving up. Sometimes it's moving over.
Exactly.
Right. So maybe you don't want to be the head brewer, but maybe there's a specialization you want to go into.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So maybe, you really love sours.
Oh.
So maybe you want to specialize in that. And you become known as the sour beer person in that brewery.
The Sourmeister. I love it.
Right. Or you just really love the science. So you really get into the yeast propagation and you become like the yeast guru.
This is like opening up my world right now because I only ever think about beer as the finished product.
Right.
I never think about all the intricacies that go into it. Fascinating.
And the path to those stars, often involves continuous learning.
Yes.
The guide emphasizes how important it is to stay updated on new techniques, new equipment, new hop varieties, because those come out every season, it seems like.
It's true. It's true. Like the world of craft beer, this is what I love about it so much. It's like it's in a constant state of fermentation itself.
Yeah.
Yes. Always evolving.
Always.
Always bubbling up with new ideas and new possibilities. It's so exciting to be a part of this world.
It really is. It's something new every day, so you never get bored.
It really does feel like one of those careers where you can really combine your passion with your profession.
100%.
Right.
And the more you invest in your knowledge and your skills, the more you're going to get out of it.
So to wrap things up, if you're out there and you are dreaming of becoming a cellar operator, you've got this. We have walked you through the interview process. We've tackled these tough questions. We've explored these exciting career paths. And I really hope that this deep dive has given you the confidence to go out there and absolutely crush that interview.
Yes, and remember to showcase your passion, your knowledge, that meticulous attention to detail that makes a great cellar operator.
And don't forget about those incredible resources that RoleCatcher provides. Their AI-powered tools can be your secret weapon, from crafting that perfect resume to practicing those interview skills and ultimately landing that dream job.
Yes. So go out there, brew up some magic, and let's raise a glass to your future success. Cheers.
Cheers to that. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.